So guys, we are continuing. And the agenda of the second part of our talk is to actually go to the practical recommendations of what we as SCENAR therapists should do, considering all the philosophical thing that we just went through. So what we as SCENAR therapists need to do when we face a system that developed the problem. So the client is a system problem. You are the one healthy, well, supposedly, right? but your client kind of expects you to be. So the first thing we need to remember is that the client who is out of balance, what generally happens, what can one word that could signify, that could actually describe his condition, is that no matter what the problem or disease or disorder is, what happened to a client is that the system with the problem loses coherence. And the coherence is a very important notion that is very simple actually to explain to your client and for them to understand why you are doing what you're doing with your technology and with your therapy. So just so we're clear on the notion of coherence. Coherence is not, it's not a medical term. It's a term in application to the systems. When we look at the world as a systemic universe, so this is the inherent quality of a system. Coherence means harmony. It means that every part in the system, and they can be different, and each part of the living system has its own vibrations, has its own tune, and speaks different language, and has a different structure, and yet they all play together harmoniously, synergistically, and work for the common purpose, for the common goal, for the common function. The analogy I usually give my clients is the orchestra. So there is an orchestra with instruments of a different shape. Each instrument has its own tune and its own vibrations and its own frequencies. And yet when they listen to each other and when they are harmonized and synchronized, then you have the coherence, then you have symphony. And you accept it, you perceive it as harmonious and beautiful. As soon as one of the instruments falls out of tune, what happens? There is no more symphony. It's cacophony, right? And just one falls out of the harmony. So what do you think would be the way of the bigger system, of the orchestra, of dealing with that problem? Well, actually two, right? Either educate or take it out. Yeah. So the rest continue to play. Well, guess what the bigger system does to us? Same thing. We need to synchronize ourselves with the rest of the universe, and unless we learn, we will be taken out. So it's what we do here for many of us is a lesson, right? So we need to learn our lesson, and if we don't, then as Stephen say, you would come back again to learn the lesson and to again learn the lesson, and you still don't learn the lesson. Sorry. But that's what bigger system actually has to sacrifice in order to keep functioning and keep its own harmony and keep playing the symphony. And that is actually applied to every part of your body as well, because you are a system. You're a living system that plays the symphony of life. So the notion of coherence can be applied to any system that is out there. The quality of main systemic qualities that keep the state of coherence. And I'm not going through all of them, because if you're interested in systemic principle, you can go and own. But basically what you need to remember is that the system keeps its level of coherence, harmony, and synergy, and that's what is interested in. As soon as the system, to actually easier understand the coherence, there is that's the difference between the laser light and the sunlight or the flashlight. So in a flashlight, all the frequencies are scrambled. No, not really scrambled, but they're chaotic. In a laser light, they are synchronized, and that's why the laser is a very effective light, can travel a very long distance. It's very effective for whatever applications you have. But that's a difference between coherent and non-coherent light, so you can kind of see what to apply to your own frequencies. So health is a state when your body plays the symphony of life. When the vibrations of every organ in your body, unique vibrations, are synchronized and harmonized. And of course, you understand, we already talked about it, that that state completely depends on how well communication in the body goes, right? If the communication flows freely, and we talked about our fiber optics and that the body communicate by the means of coherent light, which now you know how it looks like, then every cell in the body hears the other cell and synchronizes itself with the others. Now, if a part of your body stops listening and does not hear the rest, what happens? What kind of disorder comes to mind? Cancer. Cancer. Because as soon as the part of the body starts considering itself an isolated something that does not want to live in harmony with the rest of the body and starts to listening to its own rules and consuming the energy resources and uncontrollably grow and reproduce, and the central system, central nervous system already doesn't have power to control it or to suppress the growth, then cancer develops. Cancer is one of the most incoherent state of the body. When the body completely loses coherence and there is no control, no integration, that part of the body is not integrated with the rest. Now, why do you think SCENAR sometimes, and I'm saying sometimes, because we legally are not allowed actually to talk about the cancer treatments and our treatments. I don't know how it's in Australia, but in the States, it's an industry. Cancer is an industry. Don't go there. Don't talk about it. So, however, now that you understand the notion of coherence and you understand what happens to the cancerous growth, that is still your own cells. It's a healthy cells. They are just young, they're aggressive, they're reproducing quickly, and they're not listening to anything else in the body. Disconnected, exactly. There is a disconnect there. So, if we manage to connect it to the rest of the body, guess what happens?
Heals.
Exactly, because, and it's not going to destroy the cancer. It's not our agenda to kill. The agenda is for these cells to start to listening to the rest of the body and differentiate and mature and grow into differentiated tissue instead of being young and aggressive and non-differentiated. So muscle, if you have a cancer in the muscle, it will grow into muscle cells, and the bone, it will grow into bone cells. It will mature and differentiate in the cells that supposed to be there. And if some cells are not necessary, then they will just quietly die and nothing happens. It's not going to be a destruction. It's going to be transformation. That's the difference. If we manage to reconnect that part of the body to the rest of the body, and I'm a little bit deviating from what our main agenda, but I think it's important for you to understand. So what would, in this case, when you're treating cancer, what would be your kind of a general approach to therapy? What would you use? Objective, subjective, local, general? What do you think? General areas of regulation. As a rule, you need the entire system to show the rest of the body, right? The cancerous growth. Doesn't matter where cancer is. It really does not matter. It's the same process of the tissue not listening for the rest, disconnected something. And it has nothing to do with viruses or fungus, because anything, and virus and fungi can be in the core of it, but the basic principle, informationally, it is a disconnected part. You reconnect it, the body can deal with that. As soon as the body is aware, right now the body is not aware. So that's kind of general principle of dealing with cancer. So you will use the general areas of regulation always to start with. 3 pathways, 6 points is the best one to begin, and continue on a regular basis. And then you will add some other areas, general areas of regulation, and you will treat locally, however, not directly on a tumor. Don't do that. Don't feed it. Walk around it with the local adaptive reactions, because you want the local adaptive reactions. You want the body to isolate the growth, right? And you want to actually make sure that adaptive reactions are happening, but never directly. So that's kind of little deviation, okay? So, cancer is the most incoherent state of the body, and when the body is in full state of health, it means everyone is listening to each other, the organs are singing, and then you feel joy. You feel vitality, you feel joy, and informationally you self-transparent, no blockages of information flow or flow of coherent light in the body, and then you look radiant. What do you think this expression came from? Again, right? Radiant. Because you will be radiating health. It will be literally showing on Kirlian photography as the big, strong aura. Let's say, like, the Dalai Lama has. Big, strong aura that affects others in your presence. And when that happens, people around you will feel it instinctively. People can't see auras, well, most of us at least can't, but we can feel it. And when we are in the presence of a coherent being, we are naturally drawn to them. Because they are coherent, they can make us coherent, right? They are radiant, and we say, oh, look, you look radiant today. That is a reflection of your internal beauty, and then we say a person is beautiful. And that's an internal beauty. Sometimes corresponds to external beauty, but not necessarily. Sometimes it's reflected in the external beauty, but not necessarily. But we will still say a person is beautiful, because the beauty we perceive with our heart, not with our eyes. The actual beauty, the inner beauty we see with our heart. And your heart will always feel coherence, because it's tuned to it. Your heart is tuned to the vibrations of unconditional love. It's its core vibrations. That's what your heart lives on. It feels that connection to our higher self. So when your heart actually perceives the coherent vibrations from the outside, it will always let you know. And it will be drawn to it as drawn to internal beauty. Again, deviation about the kind of core of the beauty. Now, if the body falls out of the state of health, falls out of the state of coherence, we sometimes say that the body has scrambled frequencies. And really it is. It is one of the body's instrument and the body's orchestra all of a sudden started misbehaving and changing its tune, and then you have that condition when there is no harmonization. In this case, of course, some of the body parts lose the connections. They lose the ability to communicate, so coherent light doesn't go through. In this case, we, with our scanner, what we can do, we can clean the ways of information flow, right? Clean the ways of energy flow and restore the state of harmonization, state of coherence. So any disease is basically incoherent state to one degree or another. People say MS is one of the most rigid conditions. So MS usually means very rigid patterns of a nervous system, very strict order. And I want to underline that order doesn't mean coherence. Order means that everyone marching in the same rhythm. It's like soldiers marching across the bridge. Everyone is marching in the same frequency, right? Same frequency, same order. And sometimes happens that if they get into resonance with a bridge can fall apart, right? This is not coherence. This is a perfect order, but this is not coherence. Coherence is a very fragile balance between the perfect order and the chaos. It's where units are individual. Units have different frequencies, and everyone marching a little bit differently, and yet everyone is listening to each other and synchronized. That's coherence. Do you see the difference? Okay, perfect. So that's the state of health. Every organ has its own frequencies. We support it. And that's why we have so many modalities out there besides the scanner therapy that work on frequencies, like Rife frequencies, right? Like many other things. They work with the frequencies of the body to restore the original frequencies and vibrations of particular organ or tissue. And that is very good. That is absolutely, like, that's why they can be successful. It's sometimes difficult, but that's the basis of their work. They want to restore the original frequencies of the organ or tissue. Now, can we use a scanner to reestablish coherence? Of course, well, any scanner procedure, any scanner therapy or technology will reestablish the state of coherence. That's our agenda. But there are a few things that you can do quickly to actually kind of affect the state of coherence in in the quickest way possible. Okay, so this is one of them. Since your scanner is actually the device that works directly on the nervous system and directly on the central nervous system, and your brain is a connector between your inner superficial level or your body level and your mind level, right? The brain is there, so you probably want to affect the brain quickly. This is not the way, as you can understand, but it's one of the ways that affect the state of coherence as soon as possible. So what we do? We actually take the small spheres, 12 mils. In this case, this is 16. Remember, I showed you that was 16. So you take the 12 mils and you put them in your ears on the both sides, like this, right? So what happens then? This actually, well, and you put your scanner on a FMVAR or one of the swings, so you can go through as many variations of the combination of the settings as possible. So the body can choose whatever it wants. If you're doing it on FMVAR, then you know that you have to go through 2-minute cycle, because 2-minute cycle gives you all the possible combinations. Or you can use one of the swings. It's your choice. What is important is that by moving the scanner impulse from one ear to another, you are synchronizing the hemispheres. So you are balancing your left brain, which is logical, with your right brain, which is artistic. And some of us are left brain people, some of us are right brain people. Some of us have perfect balance of it. Some of us have a little bit, one works better than the other. What you want to achieve by that is the balancing between the hemispheres. And it does it pretty efficiently. But that's not the end of it. The next thing you do, you put your 12 mils, or here you can use 16, one on the third eye and another one on the very base of the skull. But you have to make sure it is the base of the skull. I mean, C1, atlas projection. So it's not a hairline, it's above the hairline. So it's where exactly where your atlas is. Then when you have that line, if you move the direct line between the two, you will see that your pituitary gland, that your pineal gland are right on the way, right on that straight line. So by that, you're also improving the function of both glands, and you are improving the hormonal release and balancing lots of functions which this organ or hormonal glands control. Combining both, you have a very good chance of increasing the level of coherence, the level of vibrations of many parts and organs in the body, because hormones control a lot of our functions, of our other functions. So that's what you do. Very simple, very quick, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Very comfortable. Yeah, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be strong, you know, scanner impulse doesn't have to be strong in order to be effective. But you have to feel it. And some people, it's best to do if your client just closes, or you can do it on yourself, just close your eyes and see what happens. Better to do with a pair of electrodes than you have, you know, the electricity running from one to the other. You can't do it with a scanner just on the 2 points. It's not going to be as effective. We like a pair of electrodes, so we have to kind of extend the area that scanner affects. So that's one of the ways. Like it a lot. Use it a lot.
What specific conditions?
Specific conditions, well, obviously establishing coherence level for anything, however, specifically good for, let's say, insomnia, depression, ADD, ADHD, and any kind of the disorder that affects your emotional level. Like, so whenever you have, let's say, the disease on the second level, the disease on the level of painful memories, something that affected you emotionally, so that's very good for that. And we also use it for age reversal, because the release of age hormones, melatonin, with the brain cross you get the pituitary gland. So pituitary gland will give you the the human growth hormone, HGH, yeah. The pineal gland will give you melatonin. Right? So you get the main age or youth hormones, rather. They're called the youth hormones. So you get the age reversal effect. And melatonin will improve your sleep. Melatonin is also antioxidant. It's one of the most powerful antioxidants in the human body. So you get the release of melatonin. And there are other things. I'm just mentioning a few, but you understand that affecting the brain on a level of on the base level will actually regulate a lot of the body functions. Okay.
About Parkinson's disease?
We use that a lot. We use it a lot. I'm just not saying it because it's kind of, again, we are in the States, we're running into the industry that controls that. But for Parkinson's, absolutely. Guys, Parkinson's disease, one of the theories behind Parkinson's disease is that the tremors, it's actually a sign of the nervous system to you, that nervous system doesn't have enough energy. Because, and the reason, when you are freezing, you're shivering.
Yes.
By the way of shivering, your muscles actually create energy to warm up the body. Well, the nervous system does the same thing. When it doesn't have enough energy to function, it starts to shake. And that's what Parkinson's is. So you need to feed the nervous system with energy, with a coherent energy, and then actually tremors disappear. And we use also the laser light for that a lot. The soft laser, or low level laser. With a pretty powerful, so we just feed the nervous system and then we program it with a scanner, and we have tremendous results with Parkinson's.
Is it ideal for MS?
Good too, not as good, unfortunately. Don't know why. Works for Parkinson's better. Didn't work with Alzheimer's yet, but my thinking is that it would be effective, actually.
How often you would treat a person with Parkinson's?
Every day.
Every day.
Now, don't forget about your important cross points, right? That also, you understand that anything that restores the symmetry and shows the body right and left and gives the body comparisons would be very effective for restoring coherence of the coherence level of the body. So the cross points, there is your points that you already know. It's mostly your third eye, which you use in the brain cross as well. But in this case, the opposite point will be your coccyx, just not shown on the picture, but that's a cross, right? And then there's another cross between C7 and the thymus projection. Again, not exactly where thymus is, but a little bit lower, but still opposites. So one opposite, another opposite. So we call it the big cross. Also restores the coherence level very well. If you can do it, it's better to do with the electrodes, with a pair of electrodes, but you can also do just to go around with the device itself.
Did you just do it once?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
For how long?
2 minutes.
2 minutes?
2 minutes, not more than that. I mean, you don't need more, really.
Do you worry about where you put some good and negative?
Worry about what?
Where you put the positive and
We actually sometimes reverse it, like 1 minute, 1 minute. Positive, negative, and then we will reverse it. We actually, I'm just not mentioning it, but when you're working with a pair of electrodes, guys, always try to switch them around in the middle of the procedure, just to give the body a chance to work on positive, negative, negative, positive, to balance it.
When you say 2 minutes, do you mean 2 minutes for each pair?
For each pair,
Yeah.
for each pair, yes. So that would be the big cross. Now, what else can you do to restore coherence? Well, you obviously, your 3 ways, 3 pathways, 6 points is always a great idea. You can, in any way you want. 3 pathways, 6 points as a routes, not as the technique, not as a base technique. And you can use principles higher or higher on it, as if you want to work in D1. You can work in D0 just in subjective mode and just go along those routes in subjective mode. You can do that as well. And work along as with the scanner algorithm, looking for small asymmetry, for asymmetry first, then small asymmetry, then turning it into the opposite, well, in your usual algorithm. So you can use that on the 3 pathways, 6 points routes. Works very well because addresses, as you already know, I'm not repeating it, addresses all elements of the central nervous system, spinal cord as well as the brain through the 6 points.
Down the bottom we say, starting with each electrode, the same polarity. So we're going to be doing, we do 1, 2, it will be positive, negative, and we move.
Yes, you can. We usually work on the back. We work just with the scanner alone, with no electrodes.
Yeah.
Or you can use them on the sides, like on the paravertebrals. You can go with the 2 electrodes. You can do that too.
No, I mean
For that, actually, these electrodes are better if you're working on the back. And when you're working on a face, what you do, a preferable way of us to work, positive, negative, or negative, positive, doesn't matter the order. Positive, negative, right? Positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, right?
And then the next time, do you change? Would you do then?
No, you don't have to, because each point was already influenced twice with a positive and negative. So just don't forget to connect the last point with the first point when you end. Or do just if you use a pair of electrodes, you can do this and reverse, do and reverse, like and reverse. You can do that too. It's a question of choice. When you have a pair of electrodes, you have so many options. So you can just play with that. Okay, next, what we also can do, we can do the chakra opening. Would also very effectively restore the coherence in the system. And right now we're talking about the entire system. So what we can do for the entire body, regardless of the particular disease or disorder that a client has. Because the coherence is not there, rather, right? The coherence level needs to be restored. Therefore, each of these techniques is going to help no matter what disease or disorder your client has. And you may want to incorporate it in the course of your treatments, into design of your treatment course at some point, somewhere. Okay, chakra balancing is very simple. With chakra opening and balancing, we only do with the pairs of electrodes. It doesn't really make any sense to do just with the scanner alone. And we prefer large electrodes like this. So we just putting them on the corresponding points on the front and on the back. And we put swing or FM bar and let it run for about 2 minutes on each. But in order to